checking in about how the launch of the top 50 farmers went. And no, it's not ranking anybody, so nobody won. We sat down only 6 months ago, but it feels much longer. And this time we sit down in person with Cindie to discuss the progress of making farmers the next superheroes in climate, water, health, and more. And we unpack her vision for systems change in food and agriculture. Directly from one of the leading culinary scenes globally, Copenhagen, we asked the question why a leading farm-to-table local cuisine movement hasn't led to change in the agri-food system yet, and what to do about it. For example, her work in Foodprint Nordic, how they are about to expand to the rest of Europe. It sounds very simple, but of course it isn't. Try to access a whole lot of new money that isn't active in the space yet, money of us, eaters, and get it as quickly as possible with the least strings attached to farmers that want to put it to work for expanding their regenerative practices, trees in the ground, compost equipment, etc. But also, even more importantly, how this can be a blueprint for real action on a regional and potentially national level to funnel government policies to really support regen farmers on the ground. This is the Investing in Regenerative Agriculture and Food podcast, where we learn more on how to put money to work to regenerate soil, people, local communities, and ecosystems, while making an appropriate and fair return. Welcome to another episode. Today we have Cindie back on the show, which I think was a year and a half ago because your applications went live in November, I think, 2023. Yeah, we're 25 now. And a lot has happened. So co-founder of Top 50 Farmers and of course Foodprint Nordics, which we're going to explore both in detail in this second interview. So welcome back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and happy we could meet here in Copenhagen.
In person, it's always better. Yeah. We're in an official studio, but there's a staircase outside this door. There might be some door slamming at some point. We'll try to edit as much of that. But just so you know, we have very fancy microphones, which we're not using because I don't know how to work. But I brought my own to record here. And last time I think we went live around the time you opened applications. It was a very exciting time, but also very much still, let's say, not in the dark, but you had no idea if anybody would apply or 3 people instead of 20. And how, now a year and a half later, it feels like a train definitely has left the station and is going. Like how has the last 18 months been for Top 50 Farmers? And then we get to Foodprint Nordic as well.
Yeah.
What's the launch been? The first cohort is live. A lot of noise you created online for farmers, which was one of the goals or is one of the goals. How would you summarize the last 18 months?
Hectic and a lot of fun too. So it was actually only last year when we opened up the first application for Top 50 Farmers. And
wow, yeah, of course, only 6 months ago.
Yeah, it's only 6 months ago, but of course there was a lot of work before that. And then we announced the farmers this year in March. So of course that has been a really big job because it was important for us to do it well too. We do have a selection committee, right? There's a process for everything. But this was what we have been aiming for. Like it was a big thing we did, and it was so much fun to be on that virtual ceremony on March 18th. We had no clue if that would work online, you could say. Most people were skeptical. We were too, but how do you gather like the 50 farmers with stakeholders? It's not possible. And it was really important for us that they were all there. And we worked with this amazing woman, Perle, from the Netherlands, who designed it, who designs all our sessions. And to be honest, I think it worked well. I think it was fun. I think people were very engaged. Can we improve? Yes, we have to improve a lot with all new initiatives that comes with learning, lots of learning and implementing. So now they're announced, we have kicked off what we call our annual recognition program, which is what the farmers get access to. And some of you might have seen all the stories that we're sharing around the farmers, which of course is much more work than we ever expected because we thought we would do profiles. But what came to our mind learning from the PR situation is very few journalists are writing farmer stories these days. They simply don't have the capacity to do it. And we were like, that's such a shame. So when we thought we'd get a lot of press around the specific farmers, it was more like the cohort and overall. So we actually took a step back and said, okay, then we're going to do not profiles, but stories. And yes, we did have a lot of information in the applications, but if you want to find the hook of each story and really find out what is motivating each farmer, who are they, and so on. That is a lot of work. Let me just tell you that Annalisa and the communication team are working hard. But I think we are on a path now. If you go in there, the stories are incredible. The farmers are incredible. And our job is now to tell that story, which is so exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's funny because it feels like 18 months from the outside seeing all the stories, but it's only 6. So definitely November 2024. And you can see the attention. I follow it mostly LinkedIn and Instagram, and of course get the updates, etc. Yeah, most of them made videos as well. Like I can only imagine chasing 50 farmers throughout Europe to get imagery, to get hooks, to get stories. And of course it's in their interest, but it's not their top priority, which we all completely understand because they have very complex farms to run. And some might have a bit of extra capacity in terms of people because they're much bigger. Others are 2 people and a market garden. And so, yeah, let's say very few have a dedicated communication person to communicate with you that then can share those stories. And have you now seen journalists and others pick up on the more individual farms, or is it still a more general regen farm story throughout Europe or Southern Europe or whatever region?
I think we got 72 articles from our launch through Europe. I think 10% is like farmer-specific stories where they actually went out to some of the farms, one in Norway, and actually talked to the farmers. Everything else is like, overall, who are we and as an organization and what do we want to do? And while I love to tell our story, it's not about us. So that's where we have a lot of work to do, which we are trying to do.
That's one of the issues, yeah.
With the stories now, we create them, and hopefully that will be published in the broader media picture along the way. But as you say, farmers are busy, but I can only say I have been so surprised and so happy to see their commitment. Even to get them to apply to this, I was like, as you said, will we get any who applies? We got over 100, right? For being a new organization without really a brand and not promising anything, because we also want to make sure we don't overpromise, I was so thankful that people trusted in us and gave us that, opportunity, or what you want to say.
Also time. Like I've heard, people reached out to us as well, very honestly. Is this real? Like,
Yeah.
Should we spend whatever time we need to spend to do it well? Or is it one of those that, okay, we apply for something and then we never hear back and that's it? And that, of course, now you're over that hump because you have an amazing collection of 50 farmers. So now you can pull to that, or you can point to that, for the next cohort, say, look, this is real. And now we're going to work on cohort 2, 3, 4, and 5. But for that first one, it's super tricky to get people to, obviously, to spend even half an hour on something that they have never heard before.
And I would also say the application is not easy access, because for us, it was also important to get the more committed farmers to begin with, right? Because we do need some information. We do need some pictures, because if we have no information, we cannot select. And also for the recognition program that they enter, if there's no commitment from their side, we can do everything we can but you need people to be committed. So which was also why we could also have made an application that was just like 2 sentences, like 5 minutes. And then we'd have gotten like maybe 500 applications. And people have been very focused on the number of applications, where I'm like, that's not the importance.
No.
The importance is quality here, like who actually filled in. Of course, as you said, there has been a challenge because some people were like, what is this? So maybe they didn't spend too much time on the application, but they're amazing farmers. But we have to, you can say, judge on the applications, while this time we also took a lot of other things in, because as many farmers who don't even have a social profile is some of like one of the most incredible farmers. Like maybe they're not good on socials, maybe they don't have a communication team, but they're doing amazing work. So that keeps being the challenge too of selecting, and that's also why we will improve the selection process with some country experts can help us be a little more in depth with how we choose it. But nobody knew, right? Now we have to follow through with everything we promised, and that's what we're trying to do. But nobody really knew what they signed up to, which makes me really thankful that people took the time.
And what has been the biggest criticism? Because, of course, when you go public and you stand on the stage, there are always people that like to throw rotten tomatoes at it or complain. And what has been the biggest criticism, the ones that, really, or the points people raised about about it is about it's not an exact list of top 50 farmers, obviously, which of course in the name suggests it, but it's of course you were very clear in the other interview, the other conversation that this is not a ranking, but it's a cohort. Like where in those 72 articles as well of journalists did they go completely off or pushed back on things that you think really?
Yes, as you say, as a new project, people have a lot of questions, and I think that's super fair. I never expected us to come out be like we just know it all. We also have to learn, and there was a few things. One is the name. That was the name who came up back then when we sat together, and I think it also comes to how we want to talk about agriculture. There's so much language we need to change. And that also comes with, this is not a ranking. I know we have been used to for many years talking about rankings, but this is not a ranking, but we do highlight 50 role models. And that is also a top of something, but it's not a ranking. The other thing, of course, is when you choose people, there will always be people who didn't make it into the cohort. Doesn't mean they are not incredible farmers, but it means that we had to base it on the application. And that will never give us a full picture. It's the same like when people do job application. You review the application, not everything around it, which is tricky. It will never be perfect. It can never be. And one, I think, learning that we had is, so we ended up doing what we call country caps, because you have countries that are very strong when it comes to regenerative farmers, and you also have countries that are just starting. But it's really important for top 50 farmers to showcase different pathways and different role models. So we cannot only highlight Portugal or Italy. Well, that could be easy to do. We also have many other countries. So we did a country cap where it means you can only have, I think it's 20%, which is 4 farms per country. Having 4 farms from Portugal, for example, is very little. It means that some of the best farmers there and most pioneering farmers did not make it this year. Of course, that's a criticism. If you go to Spain, we did not think about regional caps, which means that we are heavily represented on Ibiza, not the rest of Spain, which is for next one, okay, we'll have regional caps. So lots of learnings, and we just have to learn for each year on how we will do it. But a selection will never be the full picture. And that's also something that we have to accept. And so shout out to, I hope a lot of farmers who didn't make it this time will apply again, right? Because it is really about highlighting the incredible stories out there.
And is that I'm not saying a fear, but finding 50 every year, seeing 100, of course, gives a nice impression or a nice insight into that, the next group. Because I remember that I was part of the Investment Ready program at the Impact Hub Amsterdam a long time ago as a mentor. And we really thought, okay, we'll find a nice cohort the first time. Will there be another one out there? Let's say, mowed the grass and that's it? Or will it recover quickly enough, just to stay in the metaphor? And actually what we found is the quality improved over time, simply because it was quite a time commitment from companies. They loved it, but the second cohort was really waiting to see what the first cohort was doing and then actually committed to applying even and to going through. So actually the quality continued to improve. Well, we thought, maybe we just had the best ones now, or the most interesting ones, and that was all that was out there. So it was a big, the first one was a big gamble or a big question, and the second one was even a bigger question. Are there others out there? Is that a thought, or have you seen the quality and the quantity? We easily fill another cohort when the time comes, probably in November or in autumn when you open it up again.
Yeah, we're going to open up in November 4th again. This is a question we have already gotten also from funders. And I think it's interesting because it goes back to our scarcity mindset all the time. Do we have enough? And I can only say we will keep going as long as we can find really incredible farmers. And I think we can go many cohorts still. You know a lot of farmers who are not in there. I know a lot of farmers who are not in there yet. I know there will be many more cohorts. And top 50 farmers has never only been the idea about Europe. We are thinking we want to include other regions along the way. So it's not only, yes, there will, I truly believe there will be many more out there, but I understand the question, but I think for many regards in this world, we need to move out of the scarcity mindset and see what happens. I also often say we are a nonprofit organization. We are here for some time. It's never the idea within a nonprofit to go forever. We are here as long as it's needed for the system change. So when we, in 10, let's say 10 years, like there's no, like all farmers has really been like highlighted, shared, there's new conversations, funding is floating into the space, I will be good. Let's do
to close
something
it.
different.
And from a funder perspective, because we talked about it quite extensively in the other conversation, which of course I will link below, how has that been? You've been very successful in fundraising for a new initiative, very vocal about, let's say, compensation and making sure that this is a long-term regenerative thing in itself as well. Now that it's live, has it been easier, different? Like how are the funding? Because you need funding for the next years. Obviously, it's not that you raised everything for 10 cohorts or something. Like all these funders are interested, even the ones that, very brave funders that joined, they're not going to say, see you in 5 years, here's the budget. How has it been to now be fundraising for something that is live and that you can point at? In the funder community, has that made a significant shift, or is it still as difficult for multi-year rounds, etc., as it was a year ago?
We just started the next funding round, right? So we fundraised for the first 2 years to begin with. And from April next year, 26, that's where we enter a new funding cycle. So I'm on the road right now. I am learning. I don't come from the nonprofit world. Foodprint Nordic was the first nonprofit organization I ever did, not knowing about the philanthropy landscape, which is a big challenge, right? So the funders we have now has of course bought into an idea. They had no clue how we would carry this out, what would we do. So thankful they said yes. Now we have something to show. We do have the first cohort. We have a program for them. We have showed some kind of impact. Have we shown results? I wouldn't say that yet. It takes time. So we will see. I'm still learning. Right now, we are opening all doors for foundations, family offices, and people out there who can see the idea of having this initiative going. Hopefully we'll close 3 years, I would say, right? Because as most people running nonprofits, I think we have seen also many times, yes, they run out of money, but what they also run out is energy. And what we need right now is people in this space to close some of these gaps that are not done by the system or traditional funding. So it's really important that we also stay motivated, energized, not burning out. So we can do everything we can do and we work very hard, but in the end it will be to like the world outside to just like to really decide should it prolong. That's how I feel sometimes. I feel we work hard, but we want to take care of ourselves. And that also goes for not running on a minimum salary. I often speak about this. I feel it's interesting that we always want impact work to be cheap. I completely disagree. So yeah, we are looking for value-aligned funders also in that regard.
Yeah, which was a piece last time we talked, and I think it's such an interesting pushback to everything in impact and salaries, etc., have to be cheap because you get so much reward elsewhere or something, or it's okay if you burn out, or it's okay if the quality of life, etc. Which then still the scarcity versus abundant mindset, like it's great on paper, but then if you get pushback from a funder or potential funder and you need that money, or you think you need that money, you don't know if others are out there. It's a conversation we had with Thomas Hogenhaven actually here as well. They just said no to quite a significant institutional investor. The interview just went loud because they weren't aligned in values, but also weren't aligned in impact metrics. And they were scared that ticket would distract them from their core mission, which is funding radical founders. But saying no to a 7 million check when you have 22 million under management, requires some strong sense of commitment and purpose. And knowing, he says, I know there will be other tickets out there that are more aligned, and there will be, but still, it's not easy to say no to that kind of funding, or in this case, investment.
No, nothing of this is easy, right? It is really, you're in it for the long run, and everything takes time, and sometimes you have to say no like this to stay in for a longer time. It's also about perspective. It's not like it's an ultra marathon what we are doing in this space right now, right? So I think you can say yes to something easier now, but will you sustain a long run? I don't think so. And we can't run around and talk about regeneration and all this if then we run organization and businesses like just full speed on, no value alignment. Like really, regeneration is about relationships and connection also. And it's about reconnection. And I think we need to think about that. I'm saying that now while still fundraising, yes, and we will see what happens. But I feel we're doing everything we can. We have a great advisory board and also board of directors who are supporting so much, people around us. So yeah, that's where we stand, and we will keep our values. We need that. Also, like, just personal, it needs to be value aligned before I'm interested, to be honest. And I will also say, I don't believe we are going to be 100% funded for all the time we're going to be here. That's not what I wish. Like, I think right now we have spent soon 2 years, next year, on creating a foundation. Then I see the next 3 years of capacity building that out. But we want revenue streams too. I think that's also where we need to change our minds a little bit about nonprofits, right? Nonprofits don't have to rely 100% on funding. You can have revenue streams. You can think a bit about a business. Yes, you have different shareholders, but you can think about it. So we're also looking for partnerships that comes back to the farmers too. Like, we could only say yes if it has value for the farmers. Again, back value alignment, right? But that's what we are building out as we go.
And to shift gears a bit to Zero Foodprint Nordics, which is the umbrella organization, but we didn't really talk about it last time. Of course, we covered Zero Foodprint with Anthony Mint, which I will link below as well, but I don't think we can ever spend enough time on potentially system change solutions. So Zero Foodprint Nordics here in the Nordics, soon to be Europe. What has been happening there, apart from the top 50 farmer work, which of course is under there, but there's a bigger umbrella, let's say, at work. We've been to many places here in Copenhagen, which have the mention, the 1%, and you see it in the bill, and you see some explanation, etc. What is next for Zero Foodprint?
Yeah, so as you say, like, Foodprint Nordic is an extension of Zero Foodprint in the US, soon to become Foodprint Europe, right, from next year. And that also goes because of top 50 farmers. I can come back to that. But yes, we decided to extend that model into the Nordic countries 4 years ago. So Foodprint Nordic right now is an umbrella where the only goal, you can say, is to speed up regenerative farming overall and provide as much value into the space as we can. Foodprint Nordic and Zero Foodprint is hospitality and food orientated. That means that we accelerate this transition through the food and hospitality sector. That means mostly through food brands and restaurants. So let's say you, as a guest, you go into a Foodprint Nordic member restaurants, then you will have 1% added to your bill or a fixed amount. That goes into Foodprint Nordic, and then we allocate that out to farming projects. And farmers can apply to get this money for whether that is compost projects. It can be they need to grow or scale some of their business to reach a bit of a larger market. It can be anything. It can also be for machines. Like, it's really open. It is really money that is not yet found in the system. And that's what we have to remember, that this is not a full transition money. Like, it's really for the smaller scale farms who need to scale what they're doing, and who are also, those are actually feeding the most of the world, as we have to remember the small scale still, right? So that is money that becomes available. So it's money where the farmers don't drown in bureaucracy. It's really easy to apply for this money. And we have seen great results of the money we have put out. And they're also found on our website. From next year, we're gonna expand that to Europe, right? Having more restaurants on board, having more food brands, and so on. And you and me, we have already talked about this. Like, it's still for many difficult to understand how that can be system change. But if you look at it, if you're not that many restaurants, yes, there's a little bit of money here and there, but if you think about the impact that this money can have, if you have several restaurants doing this, maybe in 5 years also cooperation. We have talked about the municipalities. This can actually scale out to be a lot of money that we have available for the regenerative farming space that is not available right now, and I don't think it will be in 5 years. We will see. I think this change could move much faster than policy if we really get it right.
Yeah, no, I think it's an it's an overlooked piece. Like everybody talks about policy and subsidies and the common agriculture policy or program here in Europe, and of course subsidies elsewhere if you're lucky or unlucky enough to be in a place where that drives. But in this current political climate, saying we're going to tax something extra, we're going to raise some money somewhere and then bring it to farmers with all the bureaucracy we know that usually these programs have, it's just going to be very difficult. Maybe an exception is India, where natural farming became the goal of the agriculture ministry, and let's see how that with policy, etc., comes to life. But for many other places, we're not there yet. Like we don't have 20, 30 years of grassroots movement that got us to that point in India.
Yeah.
And so how do you start very concretely raising significant money? Like these are small amounts, but a lot of small amounts is a lot of money from the pioneer restaurants, from food brands, etc., that understand and are anyway looking for ways. Hey, this is extra money. This is money that comes from the public. It's opt-out, meaning there's no forcing. We cannot say, ooh, we're raising taxes, etc. No, if you don't want to, you can say no to it. As a guest, I'm always wondering how many people actually do that, because opt-out is such a beautiful system in these things. And then that money goes relatively quickly without a lot of hassle to actual farmers that just need to plant more of this and this trees, or that need to get their agroforestry machinery up to date, or need to build out a compost facility further, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there, 10, 20, 30, 50 or 100K makes an enormous difference without any strings attached, without any complex reporting, without any carbon credits, God forbid, et cetera. And I think we underestimate how much of that is in itself as a first step very useful, obviously, for the farmers. But then if you start showing that, you say, look, the public and the general food buying public is okay with this, only 1% opts out, or nobody actually ever opts out, then you can go to your community and say, we discussed it with Anthony as well, what does it mean if we make this mandatory opt-out for all the food selling things in a town, or all the food selling in a region? And if that money stays in the region, then it goes actually to the farmers. Is that something that makes sense for, and I'm waiting for, also in the US, we haven't seen that yet, but for a local community or a local municipality to say, let's experiment. Yeah. Let's somehow drive some of the money that we spend on food in this area, and let's drive it back to the farmers, and let's see if that gets going. We're not there yet, but once that happens, I think we're going to get different regions say, ooh, but that's an interesting model to fund the transition we anyway want to see. We don't have a lot of extra cash at hand because everybody's cash strapped. But we do have a lot of farmers that need things and want things, and how do we flow that with relatively little effort from our side, because it's not that we need complex legislation and votes and referendums, because that's not going to fly. And that, I think that path, but that's step 4, 5, 6. Yeah. But in the next 5 years, probably we're going to see that somewhere in Europe when somebody says, ooh, let's experiment with this at scale. Or a city that's super advanced, Copenhagen or somewhere else, that says, okay, let's really push the needle here. But you need that groundwork. You need a lot of experiments where people don't opt out, actually do it. A lot of farmers that get money to do things, then you can point at, okay, what if we do this across the board?
As you say, this is the first step out of many for the system change. We have to start somewhere.
But people forget, when I talk to people about this, they say, great, 1%. And then it's, that would be nice if people raise money. But I don't think people necessarily, without looking and reading enough, obviously, but see that step 10 could be a city like Milan saying, let's get to 300-400 million a year and we actually do it without raising taxes.
Yeah. And you know what becomes very important in that situation is agriculture is very political. But in a case with this food, it's different. And so it's also going to be easier for municipalities or corporations to say, let's fund that because it goes to a majority and not to specific farms. It's about food, not so much about farming. It can actually also help the conversation and how we actually get money into the space, because food seems to be less political than farming often. So I think that's very important for the conversation. And also I want to highlight that, as many people know, restaurants, they don't have big profits. So this is not restaurants donating. It's the eaters, it's the guests. So as you say, it comes from the public money. It's just a redirection of how money goes in the system. And the whole idea with this 1% or a fixed amount is that this just becomes like business as usual. We have actually seen it on cars already, where a small percentage go to something for a more sustainable material. It just have to be like how it is when you go out and dine. A small percentage, a small amount is going back to the system where it comes. So what we do is using the chef's voice, the restaurant's platform to facilitate this change. Chefs are cultural leaders today, right? They say, what should we have on the plate? How does it look like in the future? There's such a huge opportunity to use that now with the chefs who wants to do something like this and use that platform to facilitate change beyond the plate.
And beyond their sourcing, because that's, of course, the first idea. People, chefs, great, they have a big voice, okay, their menu and how they source. But what we also discussed last time with Anthony, that doesn't necessarily lead to extra hectares or extra compost or extra trees. It might just be competing, okay, I select these carrots because they're grown differently compared to others. Doesn't mean extra carrots will be grown for...
No.
Extra regen carrots will be grown, or whatever regen it means in a carrot. And so we need extra money, and probably a 1% or a fixed fee. Like, you don't even see it 99% of the times. You might have a discussion about it. You might see it because there's some stickers around. It might lead to something, but it's a lot of small pieces of, like, a lot of times a small amount, it leads to quite significant amount. And for these smaller operations or larger operations, some of this funding would either be impossible or incredibly difficult to get somewhere, or simply not existent.
Exactly. Yeah. So it has a huge potential in my eyes. I think we have only been here for 4 years in the Nordics. We have tried a lot of things. And as I shared with you too, to be very honest, it has been very practical admin challenges, which I had no clue about when we did something like this. So adding 1% is actually not very easy on a back-end system in a restaurant. And that's what people don't think about. So that's also, like, we have learned a lot the last 4 years of how can we make this easier for the restaurants so it doesn't become like this hiccup to be part of. And that's what we will take these learnings and scale that out to Europe next year based on that now. Finding like the right people, the right spaces. Because will this be for everybody? At some point, yes, but that's not how change is done. Like, you start with people who are already where the energy is, you build out, and that's also how we're gonna do it. And then we reach step 8, 9, 10, and then it becomes the normal. So that's really what we are aiming for. But we had to learn a lot the first 4 years. And while Zero Foodprint has done that for a longer time, I can just say US is very different from Europe. What you say, how we operate the systems, like how people understand adding anything to a bill. So let's take Denmark as an example. We are not used to adding anything to our bills. It's a huge cultural thing, and to do something like that. So that's also something we had to spend some time on.
Tipping is not a thing, which means...
Tipping is not a thing. And I can also say, just for Copenhagen, the last 3-4 years, it's been a really challenging scenario for restaurants all over the place. So it's a very challenged industry also to work with in that regard. But that's also, when you're not that many, it becomes very vulnerable. But as we build out, we will have more resilience, and we will be able to reach even more farming projects, because right now we have to be really conservative, because you never know how the next year looks like. And you don't want to overpromise for the farmers. You want to make sure you can actually pay the money you promised and all that. So it takes time. I think had huge potential. I think we had to learn a lot. And to be honest, I think with Top 50 Farmers, which is our flagship project right now, it will maybe actually give us a little bit of support in that regard, because for some reason, people understand Top 50 Farmers better than something like this. So I think it came just at the right time. We did not know that, but I think it came at a time where it gives us the opportunity to go outside the Nordics now and see what we can really do with that brand, and also getting food and hospitality even more involved, whether that is like the 1% partnership on getting the farmers be part of more events, the restaurant, the sourcing, everything. Because one thing is that is very important about that initiative that Anthony came up with. It might be 1%, but what happens as soon as you engage with a chef around these things is like more questions. It's, But if I do that, could I then get access to this? Can I meet the farmers? What do you say? Should we bring the farmer into the restaurant and invite the guests? And I'm like, yeah, sounds like a really good idea. It's about changing the conversation too. That's how we lead change.
That's
right?
an interesting angle. I never imagined the order of things would be like that. Like it's, of course, but it's easier a fixed fee to Foodprint Nordic or a 1% is probably something that lands easier than saying, oh, let's overhaul your whole sourcing guide. But then if somebody says, oh, this part of this money went to Andy outside Copenhagen to plant XYZ in terms of trees, should I meet Andy and maybe reach out and do something with the dairy or something with the eggs? Or should we have, because this is a nice almost entry gateway drug to much more relevant, not much more relevant, to deeper conversations that could change sourcing, etc. as well. And that conversation here in Copenhagen, and we've been here now for a bit, it's definitely one of the most vibrant, probably culinary scenes anywhere in terms of fine dining, in terms of farm to table, in terms of chefs, etc., etc. And then how strong is that connection to, let's say, the countryside in Denmark, to the actual, because it's a very productive, very industrialized countryside. Like how much is Copenhagen an island in that sense? Because you go around here and farm to table, not almost everywhere, but quite a bit. Stickers of how much organic is used in the kitchen. You see maybe Foodprint Nordic stickers, etc. And then you see a countryside that I think is world champion in amount of hectares or percentage of hectares used for agriculture. Very intensive.
Yes.
Lot of issues countryside-wise, pollution, like many other places.
Yeah.
How does that exist in the same country?
Yeah. I think there's a huge opportunity that is still missed. Yes, top restaurants where they source with like organic, regenerative farmers, but that's just such a small percentage of the whole culinary scene. So it's as soon as you go down to middle range and low, that would really have an impact. So still a huge missed opportunity. But I would also say, let's say that all restaurants, hospitality set in Denmark, like now we want organic, regenerative produced. It's not available. We have a huge issue with age right now, not only in Denmark, but the whole world, like farmers are aging. I read that 60% of our farmers in Denmark over the next years are going to on pension. 60%. It's a lot. We have a big issue right now where over the next 5 years, unless we really do something to attract the next generation, we will have more or less no vegetables and fruit produced locally in Denmark. Right now, it's only 25% that is locally produced in Denmark. That's not going to happen. So I can just say we have we have big potential in Denmark. We have pretty good soil to do that, and we have a lot. But it's a missed opportunity, but when it comes to like restaurants for sourcing, but we are not there also on the other side. We don't have enough farmers. We can't really attract the next generation yet, which for me is always what I want to talk about, because we have so many goals of what we want, like climate, environment, but we are missing the point of not having farmers in the future. And that's always why we talk about the next generation, showcasing role models. And the next generation is not about age, right? It's about the next generation of farmers who want to farm with organic and regenerative principles. So big potential, we could do even more. It's about changing the conversation, to be honest, and to also make it accessible. It's not accessible right now.
It's interesting how it comes back to top 50 as well, like how famous I'm saying the general we made chefs and the chef culture and the restaurants. And then it's interesting that, let's say, of course, the agriculture part is suffering like everywhere else, but that slowly now it's getting more attention. Okay, actually, if we don't train hundreds, if not thousands of farmers in the next years, there's just nobody to take over these farms, which I don't mean they close, which I don't mean like the neighbors taking over becomes even bigger, because that concentration of mega farms is accelerating everywhere in Europe. Mega factory farm-like styles is accelerating as well. So it's really, and then we celebrate like in Copenhagen and other places, like the culinary culture, like everything is fine. Let's say, okay, if we just move a bit more in farm to table, if we source slightly better, yeah, but if there's no farmer to grow the stuff, it has to come from elsewhere. It's not that it's gonna, like these flows will redirect and the countryside here will suffer.
That is actually what chefs understand. Because if they have no availability to the produce, they have no restaurant, they have no guest. So again, back to what is it that we talk about? Like, it's not just about doing better. It's not like charity like that. Like people often like
Do you
I
see
don't.
that notion landing now? Because it also seems, sorry to interrupt, but it seems easy. Of course, if you want to source really well, that's difficult, but it's easy because there's always a wholesale truck that comes. Like you can order anything on your tablet or whatever, and it's sure, of course, not the quality you want, not the freshness, not the, but it will come from somewhere. It has might been on a truck for 3 weeks, but there is.
Yes. But you know what? Chefs, they are proud of local produce. They are proud to be where they are and using that local produce. Like they're so proud of their craft. So they are like the best ambassadors for this. While they also have a really important voice from the last many years, I think it's such a missed opportunity not to engage more with hospitality and food. They care. They have a craft. They're very similar to the farmers. They are very with their craft, right? So that's why I'm so motivated to get food and hospitality involved, because I think it's a huge potential to actually transform agriculture, while policy and everything else, legislation is working also. Of course, it's not like it is many things that needs to come into question right now that we have to solve, but don't underestimate hospitality and food chef, what they can do right now for changing agriculture. I think that's a big misunderstanding.
And do you see that sense of urgency with chefs? Of course, depends. This is, you see some people asking, like, how is it going with Regen now with all the backlash in terms of sustainability and the attention and blah, blah. And I often answer, in many places, it's, especially larger food companies, it's no longer nice to have because their supply chains are suffering. Potatoes, olives, orange juice, cacao, and you don't have to follow a whole lot of commodities to see, let's say we're in a wild ride. And in those companies, or the forward-thinking ones, you hope, I know some, but not all, this is becoming a procurement department and a CFO conversation, not a chief sustainability officer conversation anymore. Do you see that sense of urgency in kitchens where you come as well? It's actually becoming more difficult to source, more difficult to, like outside the top few that of course have been sourcing directly maybe from their own farm, they know. But again, we need the layer underneath that or the layer next to that to start driving significant demand. Do you feel that sense of urgency about sourcing as well? Is that starting to pick up, like harvests that are failing, quality that's semi there, semi not really there?
Yeah. I think it also depends on where in the world we look like. So now we are in Copenhagen, Denmark. We still haven't seen the same what's happening in the south of Europe, right? Like where you really see harvests declining, weather issues. So I think the urgency in Denmark is still lacking, to be honest. Last year we did have a really big problem with potatoes because of the rain. And that's where Danish people start to be like, oh, our potatoes, right? We're a potato country, and suddenly prices raise. You had restaurants, you have places that couldn't get their normal potatoes. So the struggle is real, but being in the Nordics, it will take a longer time before the urgency is there. And while there is a big urgency, it is what I'm trying to talk to the chefs about, but not in the urgency way always, because again, you always want to motivate to change, not the other way around.
Urgency is not it's a great motivator when it's happening, but you talk about it is not so strong. But if you suddenly
true.
If you cannot get your potatoes suddenly, but if you come in, or maybe next year you cannot get your potatoes, people are like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you notice it, olive oil prices go through the roof, or whatever important sourcing you have, then, but yeah, you have to feel that. I don't think talking about urgency is such a...
No, as you said before, you have chefs who understand this and have as a big vision of also how they want to do change.
But that's the 1%.
Yes. And let's start there. There's huge potential there, and then we move it down as the world unfortunately will change, as we have already seen. Yeah. And then we will take it from there. But the struggle is real for many.
And inflation, of course, you mentioned the suffering in the restaurant space in the last couple of years. It hasn't been easy in terms of energy prices, sourcing in general. Anything has become, salaries, etc., have become a bigger piece of the pie. And restaurants, it's not that they have been running on crazy margins like software companies. So the squeeze is real there as well. Just if people recognize, ooh, this is climate weirding, and this is actually has to do with how we farm, which is a step, of course. Maybe the easier, if it doesn't hurt so much yet, the easier conversation is flavor and locality and nutrients and health and all the other things we like to talk about.
Yeah.
And let's see where we go with this. As a final question or a final piece of the conversation, we can discuss food systems change for forever. How does that integration, like now what you've learned for the last years here in the Nordics, also, are you surprised that nobody else has said, okay, we're going to do Foodprint Spain or Foodprint the Netherlands or Foodprint UK or any, because it's such a powerful, I still think it's such a powerful potential. We still have to see if it flies anywhere, but like the potential is significant. And I still have the feeling, and we talked about it before as well, it's not been really landing anywhere, like at the scale or at the explosion or mushrooming or whatever we want to call it, that we envisioned. I think when you saw it first, you were like, whoa, this is a very interesting potential piece of the puzzle. Anthony, of course, the same, and some others, but not many. Are you like, okay, now we're going to do Europe because nobody else is doing it? Or what's the feeling like? What's the feeling there?
I think I've been in conversation with more than 10 people reaching out either to Anthony or me about scaling in Europe. And I am always very clear like that it's not a part-time job to do that. It's really hard work because you do need to have some kind of relationship with the chefs. You need to manage that relationship. There's a lot of work into that still. And while you, as you also say, there's something about the timing. And when we do all this, I think we matured our learnings and also the conversations.
The language.
I don't think it's before now. And I think it does take a lot of learnings, to be honest. So nobody really did that. With top 50 farmers coming in, I felt we got a good push in trying to make it happen Europe. Because it's just, chefs are so used to the whole Michelin World's 50 Best. They really get top 50 farmers. I know, but it's like...
It's funny that it's a better gateway.
Things,
yeah, it's funny.
It's a gateway in. And so... I don't know.
You're using the competitiveness of chefs to get in.
Why not? And I think it's a huge opportunity. And why have people not been doing it? It's really difficult to build something from ground up. I think people who have done that know that. It is not a part-time job. It's not something you do once in a while. And you have to leave maybe your corporate job to do it. That's tough. And I also think that that model needs something extra. I think that is my biggest learning. Also talking to Anthony, maybe it doesn't stand alone. Maybe it comes with another initiative like Top 50 Farmers where we can build it better and then we can reach out to corporations, more chefs, more restaurants. So I think it takes something different that we haven't had and that if people look at this, might not have neither. I don't know.
Because Top 50 could be like, you want to support farmers like these that are doing amazing, to speed them up, and all the stories are already out there.
Every year we have a new cohort. We have a lot of farmers actually coming in. That's very tangible for restaurants too, saying, okay, we have these farmers coming in, we have the alumni of these farmers. This is what you support, whether that's through the recognition program or like the projects itself. I think we need that tangible element that we have not had the same way in any of the countries yet. We also tried a zero footprint in Germany. Didn't work out. So let's see.
Yeah.
We're putting all efforts in. It will take, if any chefs are listening, right? Like it is really about getting chefs on board to see how we can do this. Food
Amazing.
brands, so on.
Very interesting. I think there are many paths to systems change, but this is definitely one we haven't explored to the deepest. Well, not because of lack of trying, but definitely, because of it just hasn't taken off yet. And when we all know when the time comes for an idea or a concept to take off, because of all the hard work before, and some luck, and some timing, and some funding, and some other things, then I think we could be surprised how much this can stick and how much money can flow through this,
Yes.
which is at the end, there's a bottomless pit now. We can support the top 50 farmers, the other 50 that apply, plus we can probably make an easy list of 200, 300 that could apply tomorrow for something which would fundamentally change their farm and would make a big difference, which is like rough calculation, tens of millions, if not more, that could go every year to farmers and would have a lasting impact. Of course, started with compost and others and trees and some processing, some other things. These make huge differences. And then let's hope that the whole funding, let's say, world start waking up to farms and farming. But before that happens, I think, unfortunately, we'll be a few years in.
It will, for sure. And I think also one of my dreams is that this funding also becomes accessible for the new generation of farmers. Right now, we only fund projects, farms that are already going. We still need that funding for people to enter. So there's so much like where we can put the money. So I think that's also what is driving me. There is this need. And while this doesn't work 100% right now, we need to push to see how can we get it to work, because the need is out there. And there is so much money in this world overall. Let's figure out how to do this. And so I can't leave that. I need it to work. And when you look at most businesses and projects, it takes time. You have years of learning where things doesn't work. It's not so unusual, to be honest.
No.
So yes, moderations, we need to recreate. We will do that, and we will try in Europe from next year. I am believing it will work because the farmers really need it, and we need it. Society needs it.
And let's say not the hospitality industry or profession itself, necessarily there's a lot of money flowing through, but all of us that continue to go out for dinners, that continue to engage, there's definitely some extra cash, some extra tips, and some extra revenue streams we can unlock. So thank you so much for coming here to do a quick, or not super quick, update on top 50 farmers, and of course Foodprint Nordics, which soon is going to be Foodprint Europe. So if you're a chef, forward-thinking, acting, and you want to get involved, definitely reach out. And if you are a farmer that maybe knows a chef, like both apply, maybe that's an easier, that would be the easiest. Especially ones, I think, the fine dining, amazing, but also not the layer underneath, but that makes it a ranking again, but like multiple restaurants, slightly more fast casual, where you reach a lot of people, because this is such a good conversation starter. And then, of course, at the same time, start looking at your sourcing. But that's a sort of obvious one. So thank you so much, Cindie, for the work you do, tirelessly, endlessly banging the drums of farmers, banging the drum for the farmers, and of course, for coming on here to share about it.
Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity once again. So excited. Thank you.
Thank you for listening all the way to the end. For show notes and links discussed, check out our website, investinginregenerativeagriculture.com/posts. If you like this episode, why not share it with a friend? And get in touch with us on social media, our website, or via the Spotify app, and tell us what you liked most. And give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or your podcast player. That really, really helps us. Thanks again, and see you next time.